Welcome to Meh. Today, I will be doing a mental health PSA. I'll be talking about depression, autism spectrum disorders, obsessive-compulsive disorder, and schizophrenia. I will be reviewing the symptoms, the rarity, the possible causes, the treatments, stigmas and myths, and celebrities who have the said illness. This is just the basics, and you can look in the description below for where I got my information from. Unfortunately, they're all MLA Citations because this is a school project, and I've had to use MLA Citations on previous projects, and I didn't want to risk losing points for putting links instead of MLA Citations. So you have to type in the URL to get to the sites to find out more information. Now, let's get down to business. Okay. When I'm talking about depression here, I'm referring to all depressive disorders except for bipolar disorder, because bipolar disorder also has manic symptoms as well as depressive symptoms, and I already did a project on it, so not including it. As for all mental illnesses, they do vary from person to person, but the general symptoms for depression are sadness, fatigue, difficulty concentrating and or thinking, and increase or decrease in appetite, which would also cause a change in weight, an increase or decrease in sleep, feelings of hopelessness, suicidal thoughts, feelings of guilt, loss of interest, indecisiveness, restlessness, and low self-esteem. And well, you may think, oh, well, mental illness, I guess it's not that common. Well, you're wrong because, well, you probably know someone with some sort of depressive disorder, because 3 out of every 100 people have at least one. Well, there's no known cause, but there are possible factors. The factors are an imbalance of norepinephrine and serotonin, which are neurotransmitters. Yeah, they're like chemicals in the brain. And heredity and environmental factors. For example, school. And there's also no known way to make it go away completely, but your symptoms can improve. One way of improving your symptoms are antidepressants. This includes selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, or SSRIs for short, tricyclic antidepressants, TCAs, or monoamine oxidase inhibitors, MAOIs, and heterocyclics. Before I move on, I would like to make something clear. Because with the recent, drug overdoses and stuff, I would like to say, when taking any type of medicine, always read the warnings for side effects and read the directions. Each year, many people die from a drug overdose, and hey, reading the directions could save your life. And plus, it's helpful to know what the possible side effects are, because to evaluate the risks. Like, for example, okay, this could cure my depression, but side effect is I go totally crazy. Nope. Okay, moving on. Other possibilities of treating depression include psychotherapy, and you can also go to electroconvulsive therapy, ECT. And well, of course, with all mental illnesses, there are stigmas and myths. For example, let's say that you were having a conversation with someone and you reveal that you have depression, but that person claims that you're faking it for attention. Although there unfortunately are some people who will fake anything for attention, most people claiming to have depression actually have it. So you shouldn't assume that someone is faking something for attention when you don't have any proof. And it's really rude. Plus, just because you don't see someone suffering doesn't mean that they're suffering. There's also a belief that you can just snap out of depression like turning off a light. Mental illness doesn't work like that. You can't turn it off like a light. It's like saying someone who has cancer to snap out of it, as if there's a switch to get rid of cancer. Just like that, it doesn't work. It's also not helpful whatsoever that people assume that people with depression are weak and have a bad attitude. That's not always the case. Besides, they can't help it. Also, yoga isn't a treatment. It may work for some, it may have no effect for others, and may even make the symptoms worse. But it depends on the person. One more thing, not all people with depression self-harm. Besides, if you ask someone with depression whether they self-harm or not, they will deny it. That's because people who self-harm don't want other people to know, and they're good at hiding it. It's kind of like telling someone too much information, except that they're asking you to give too much information. You understand me? Okay. Well, now, there are actually celebrities who suffer from depression. Yes, the all-perfect celebrities have problems too. For example, Winston Churchill actually suffered from severe depression, and he did write in a journal about his black dog. Abraham Lincoln also had depression, and he wrote in a letter to a friend, and I quote, "A tendency to melancholy, let it be observed, is a misfortune, not a fault." Which, he's right. It is not your fault for having depression. It's just a bummer. Next, well, I'm not sure if she still suffers from it, but yeah, Brooke Shields suffered or still suffers from postpartum depression. What postpartum depression is, it's a type of depression that appears after giving birth, and it might eventually go away on its own, I think. For those of you who don't know who she is, she was a model in the 80s. And, well, this is of her in the 80s. She also wrote a book. And, yeah, this book called Down Came the Rain, My Journey Through Postpartum Depression. There's Terry Bradshaw. He also has depression. And if you don't know who he is, well, he used to be a football player, but he's now retired. Autism spectrum disorders, well, actually before I get to anything, I use several different names to refer to them. And if you're wondering, yes, they are all correct. Sometimes I refer to it as autism spectrum or ASD or just autism, but they're all the same thing. ASD varies a lot in severity, and, well, no two cases are the same. But I could only find the symptoms that the children have. However, the symptoms are mostly the same, and the symptoms that only apply to children, it's really obvious that they apply to children. And I grouped some of them up because I noticed that they seem to fall under categories. So the first symptom group of ASD is impaired social interactions. This group includes failure to respond to your own name, avoids eye contact, and is unresponsive to social cues, lack of empathy, just being antisocial in general, and laughing or giggling at inappropriate times. For example, at a funeral. Well, that would be awkward. The second symptom group is impaired communication. This group includes a language delay or absence, impaired speech, a meaningless repetition of words, using gestures instead of words, interpreting words or phrases concretely or literally. For example, thinking that hitting the hay actually means hitting the hay. Like hitting real hay. And they're unable to initiate or conduct conversations. They refer to themselves by their own name instead of a personal pronoun, and speaking in a sing-song voice. Other symptoms that don't go into groups are rigid when held, repetitive motions, temper tantrums, resistance to change, being hyperactive, or fixation or obsessive interest in activity, idea, or person, overreaction to sensory stimuli, and self-harm. Yes, they do self-harm sometimes, but it's not because they're sad, it's because, well, it's hard to explain. They didn't the site didn't really explain it, but they sometimes, like, bang their head on stuff like this to communicate. I don't know. Well, the rarity of ASD, it varies a lot throughout the world, and I was only able to find data about it, like the US and England data about, so I took an average. So the average of the US and England is about, and well, you might know someone with ASD, because 1 out of every 174 people are on the autism spectrum. Well, if you live in the US or England. Also, it's 3 to 4 times more common in males and females. But before I move on, I would like to make this clear. Because, well, there was an article that posted about it, and some people still believe it, and I would like to say the truth. Vaccines do not cause autism. Instead, what vaccines actually do, they protect people from illnesses such as influenza, chickenpox, measles, etc. So, get vaccinated. Don't worry. It won't cause autism. The actual cause, well, it isn't clear yet, but we do know that genetics and environmental factors are involved. For example, scientists have actually found that some people who are on the autism spectrum have part of their 15th chromosome missing or duplicated. Also, older women are more likely to give birth to a child with autism than younger mothers. Treatments are actually controversial since, well, many people on the autism spectrum, like, they accept themselves, good for them, and don't want treatment. However, treatments are available, but they only deal with the behavioral issues. Those treatments are SSRI, special education, etc. The stigmas and myths, well, I already explained this, but vaccines don't cause autism. And, well, it was some article that said that, but that's not true. They don't have anything to do with autism. Second, some people think that people on the autism spectrum look different than normal people. Everyone has something different about them, so being normal is weird, and being weird is normal. Whoa. There is nothing in autism that causes someone to look different. People with autism don't all look like this or this. No, they look like you and me and every other person. Plus, some people think that all autistic people are savants. It's true that a lot of savants are autistic, but not all autistic people are savants. Also, some people think that autistic females don't exist. Well, that's not true because, well, I said before that it is true that it's more common for males to have autism, but 1 out of every 4 to 5 people on the autism spectrum is a female. There's a stigma that people think that autism are crazy. Well, for your information, it is pronounced mental illness, not crazy. And this belief needs to be stopped. Besides, they can't help it. And while another myth is that they don't feel empathy. Well, some don't, but it really depends on the person. So, that's not true. And another myth is that all people with ASD behave badly. It doesn't apply to everyone. Plus, again, there's a belief that people are faking it. As I said, you shouldn't accuse someone of faking something if you don't have any proof. And plus, it's likely that they're telling the truth and you're just being ignorant. Also, as I said before, people think that you can turn it off like you can turn off a light. It's not like that. You can't turn off autism. Mental illness is like a light that is always on because there is no on-off switch, and you can't disconnect the wire for whatever reason. And some people think that's a choice. If it was a choice, then there would be no autistic people in the world. At least that's what I think. Because all the stigma and stuff. Saying that autism is a choice is like saying that being black or being white is a choice. Now, some celebrities. Susan Boyle, she admitted that she was actually on the autism spectrum. If you don't know who she is, she appeared on Britain's Got Talent in 2009 and sang I Dreamed a Dream from Les Miserables. Einstein was actually autistic. After studying his brain after one scientist stole it, they believe that he was somewhere on the autism spectrum. In fact, it was said that his speech was delayed, and as I said before, the speech absence or delay is one of the symptoms. Scientists also conclude that Mozart might have also been somewhere on the autism spectrum. In fact, it was said that he was hyperactive and often did repetitive movements, which are symptoms. Temple Grandin is also autistic, and well, if you don't know who she is a doctor of animal science, and she is an autism rights activist. In fact, she wrote a book called The Autistic Brain, Thinking Across the Spectrum. Moving on, the first symptom of Obsessive-Compulsive disorder, or OCD for short, is constantly worrying about something. For example, illness, injury, death, germs, screwing up at something, bad thoughts coming true, etc. The other common symptom is doing behaviors to feel safe from those said fears. Some common behaviors are washing and cleaning too much, erasing, rewriting, or redoing things, unnecessary repetition of a certain word or phrase or question or any sentence, and constantly checking and rechecking if something is closed or locked, touching or tapping or stepping in an unusual way, and putting things in a certain order. And well, I could only find data about it in the US, but I saw that between 1.7% and 4% of people who live in the US have OCD, but more people probably have it because it's probably underdiagnosed because people with OCD are good at hiding it. Well, the cause is not known, but there are factors. Factors are heredity, abnormally low levels of neurotransmitters, differences in brain structure, specifically in this case, there is less white matter, whatever that is, than normal, and, well, childhood trauma, like abuse. And, well, I actually have one more possible cause, but it's rare and it doesn't happen very often. But it has happened where a certain infection eventually led to OCD. But again, that doesn't happen very often. And well, there's no known way to make it go away completely, but the symptoms can improve. Some possibilities are psychotherapy, SSRIs, and clomipramine. Well, another option is surgery, but that is extremely rare and is almost never done, and it is, as well as should, only be done as a last resort if you've tried everything else and your OCD is still really bad. And well, again, stigmas and myths, and one of the most common myths is that OCD means being obsessed with being neat and tidy. It's true that being obsessed with being neat and tidy is common among people with OCD, but that's not always the case. Besides, OCD actually means a mental illness that causes someone to behave in an unusual way to try and make a certain worry that won't go away actually go away. And going off of that, since people think that OCD means obsessed with being neat and tidy, people use the term OCD as an adjective when it's actually a noun. Well, it may seem trivial, but it can really hurt one's feelings because they'll know that you don't know what OCD means because you're using it wrong, and they feel that no one understands them. So they feel sad. For example, someone might say, I'm a bit OCD. That's like saying, I'm diabetes about breakfast. It doesn't make sense. Plus, it could be really offensive. In fact, that goes for all terms that have to do with mental illness that people misuse. That goes for all terms that have to do with mental illness that people misuse. My mom yelled at me yesterday. She's so bipolar. Bipolar doesn't make sense in that context. You almost gave me a panic attack. Panic attack shouldn't be used in that context. You look so anorexic. Anorexic shouldn't be used in that context. My OCD is coming out again. Shouldn't be used in that context. Unless you actually have OCD and it's happening to you. And I stayed up till 1 a.m. My insomnia is so bad. Insomnia, that's not what that means and shouldn't be used in that context. I swear, I'm like retarded. Well, now retarded is an insult, but it used to actually have a medical meaning relating to mental illness. But since so many people have misused it, retarded means dumb. And we need to stop using that word. Oh yeah, yesterday I was feeling really depressed. You shouldn't use it like that. Sad and depressed, that's different. Depressed is when you're sad because of depression, and sad, you're sad because you're sad. Quit being psycho. Psycho should not be used in that context. So stop misusing those terms and others for mental disorders. It's not funny, nor cool, and you'll sound like a fool. Hey, that rhymes. Plus, it's really offensive. One more thing. Not all people who have OCD are germaphobes, nor are they all obsessed with numbers, though those are common behaviors. Now, some celebrities with this condition. Nikola Tesla had serious OCD, and well, some of his many obsessions were the number 3 and pigeons. If you don't know who he was, he invented AC current, or alternating current, and it powers a lot of stuff today. David Beckham also has OCD. In fact, he admitted that he always has to organize things in a certain way, which is one of the symptoms, as well as being obsessed with even numbers. If you don't know who he is a soccer player. Howard Hughes also had OCD. If you don't know who he was a business tycoon in the 1900s. He was extremely afraid of germs and would lay in dark, germ-free rooms with tissue boxes on his feet because he thought that it would prevent him from getting sick. Julianne Moore had OCD for several years, but her symptoms have improved. If you don't know who she is an actress. And well, it's hard to explain other than she was obsessed with the timing of things. Like, the same thing has to happen at the same time every day. Moving on, there are many types of schizophrenia, but I'll just be referring to the basic symptoms of all types. Some of the symptoms are delusions, which are false beliefs that won't go away. And it's like beliefs that you know are false, but you believe them. And somatic hallucinations, which are false sensations or perceptions that are inside of the body. Like, for example, you feel a hand squeezing your actual heart, but that's not actually happening. You understand? Okay. Hearing voices that aren't there, and thought insertion / withdrawal, and which are delusions that an outside force, like the government, can put thoughts into one's mind or remove thoughts. And disorganized speech. Someone suffering from disorganized speech might quickly change topics, speak in a confused / unintelligible mixture of random words and phrases, and that is called a word salad. For example, someone suffering from word salad might say something along the lines of cool resort, screw hobby club slice, hike traffic tower observation assault, tension, freight, wriggle, see you soon dividend. It would repeat things that someone else is saying and speak to beings that aren't there. Other symptoms of schizophrenia include a lack of an emotional response, poverty of speech, and it's not saying a lot, but it's not because of shyness from not wanting to talk, it's because you physically can't say much because your brain isn't letting you even if you want to say something. And a lack of will. You might know someone with schizophrenia because 1 out of every 100 people have some type of schizophrenia. There is no known cause, but there are possible factors. The possible factors are too much dopamine, which is a brain chemical, and heredities, differences in brain structure, childhood trauma, and it was also suggested and a virus that attacks the hippocampus, which is part of the brain. And well, there is no known cure, but the symptoms can improve. One possibility is antipsychotic medications, which include dopamine receptor antagonists, DAs, and serotonin dopamine antagonists, SDAs. But however, I strongly recommend SDAs over DAs because I've heard that SDAs are just a new and improved version of DAs, and DAs has a lot of side effects. The other possibilities are ECT, which is electroconvulsive therapy, and psychotherapy. Well, again, stigmas and myths, and some people think that all people with schizophrenia are crazy. Again, that's not the case. And as I said before, it's pronounced mental illness, not crazy. Fight the stigma. And people also think they're faking it. As I said before, don't accuse someone of faking something if you don't have any proof. And as I said before, people also think they can turn off schizophrenia like you can turn off a light. And again, that's not how it works. And then again, it's mental illness is like a light that you can't turn off because there's no switch and you can't find a cord. People also think that the voices are always telling schizophrenics to hurt people. That may be true for some, but it really depends on the person, not everyone. Also, apparently some people think that smoking weed causes schizophrenia. Smoking weed, it does cause one to become high, and it can have nasty side effects, but schizophrenia is not one of them. And schizophrenia isn't part of being high, although it may seem like it. Also, some people believe that all schizophrenics are creative. That may be true for some, but it depends on the person. Now here's some celebrities. Charles, but he prefers to go by Buddy. Bolden suffered from schizophrenia. If you don't know who he was a key figure in the development of jazz. Vincent van Gogh had severe schizophrenia and suffered from psychotic episodes. If you don't know who he was an artist. Peter Green has schizophrenia, but his symptoms have improved after undergoing ECT. If you don't know who he was a former member of 3 different rock bands: Fleetwood Mac, Peter B's Lunars, and John Mayall and the Blues Breakers. In fact, he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1998. Finally, Darrell Hammond also has schizophrenia. If you don't know who he is a comedian and a former Saturday Night Live, or SNL, actor who is now the announcer of SNL. In fact, he admitted in a 2011 interview with CNN that his abusive mother traumatized him and that childhood trauma eventually led to schizophrenia and other mental illnesses. So there's the PSA, and well, remember, the first step in breaking the stigma and busting the myths of mental illnesses is education. By the way, this is not an exhaustive list. There are plenty more mental illnesses out there, and this is just the basics. Plus, as I said before, don't forget that you have to type in the URLs to my sources because they're in MLA format because I don't want to lose points. Help break the stigma and bust the myths. Bye!